Happens to all of us. What's up, everyone? I'm Jack Fossett. Welcome to the channel and welcome to Real Guitar Talk. And today I want to talk about what do you do when you're stuck in a rut. Now, this happens to not only every guitar player that I know, but it happens to every musician that I know. It happens to every artist that I know, whether you're talking about a writer or a dancer or a visual artist. In fact, many of you may not know this, but I actually have a background in painting. Was something of a nerd, let's say. I still am something of a nerd. That's neither here nor there. The point is that any sort of artistic endeavor is going to lead to block, writer's block, artistic block, and there are going to be times when you're playing the guitar when you feel stuck. There are going to be times when you feel like the proverbial phrase is you're beating a dead horse. It just feels like you're putting in a ton of work, but you're not getting anywhere. Your ears are getting stale. That's kind of the way I've always thought of it. It's like you're putting in the motions, but there's some kind of disconnect there. And today I want to talk about a bunch of different ways that you can try and break out of that. Now, the overarching theme of this video in general is going to be change. Really, that's how you're going to get out of the rut that you're in. It has to do with change. Now, there are a number of different ways that you can approach change, but let's, for instance, just say, you're an electric guitar player, you're playing, and you just feel like your licks are dead. You're just going through the motions. You don't feel inspired. You don't feel anything coming out of it. How do you get out of that if you're stuck in it and you don't know how to? The first thing I would say, if you're an electric player, put down your electric guitar and pick up an acoustic guitar. If you're an acoustic player, put down your acoustic guitar, pick up an electric guitar. Or any kind of variation of that theme. If you always play 6-string, maybe try playing a 12-string. If you play steel string, play nylon string, right? That's for acoustic guitar players. If you're an electric guitar player, if you play overdriven all the time, play clean. If you play clean all the time, play overdriven. Try on a fuzz pedal, try on a distortion pedal. Vary your tone. Another great way in that kind of same realm is to experiment with alternate tunings. Try open G, try open E, or any kind of alternate tuning. Now, that can also lead to a new dimension, which could be, you could certainly play slide, obviously, on either acoustic or electric, but that can lead you to also learn new songs. Working on a new song, kind of breaking out of your normal routine, whether you're, playing in a band and you kind of play the same stuff and it just feels flat and dead. Well, play something that's totally outside your comfort zone. Learn a new song. Learn a new song on the other type of guitar that you don't usually use. All these things are a great way to kind of reinvigorate your brain and to get you sort of back on the right track and thinking about the guitar in a different way. We have such a limited perspective as human beings in general. We have very, very tunnel vision in a lot of ways. We get focused on what we're doing, but then we miss so much of the bigger picture of what else is out there. We kind of feel like we have this way that we do things, and that's the way to do things. And the reality is there are a lot of different ways to do things when you're talking to artistic stuff, at least. Now, one thing that might be counterintuitive, but I actually think some of the best advice I've ever gotten, and I've seen this work, is in my own life and in other people's lives, is if you're doing all these things, you're trying all this out, and you're still just not getting anywhere, one of the best things you can possibly do is just put the guitar down for a while. Put it down for a day. Put it down for a week. Just sort of reset, get away from it, sort of refresh your life in other things. Stop thinking about it so much and see if you can get back to neutral. I've almost always found if I put the guitar down for a few days that when I come back to it with sort of fresh ears. I just feel a little better. I feel like the music, it's almost like there's music that kind of gets like built up inside you that then needs to come out, as opposed to sort of like if you feel like you're trying to pour out music out of yourself and you're just empty. So that's a great way to do it is to just say like, hey, I just need a break. I need to stop. There is absolutely no shame in that. There's no defeat in that. That's actually kind of an appropriate way to approach these things. Now, the tricky thing with that can be if you're any kind of guitar professional, sometimes you need to keep at it, right? Maybe you have a gig that you need to learn some songs for, or a session that you need to learn a part for, or maybe you're a student and you really need to work on something for a recital. So what do you do in those situations? I still think one of the best things to possibly do is to put it down and just stop for a little bit, as long as you can give yourself in those situations. It's like, hey, if you got to woodshed 50 songs by tomorrow, okay, maybe you just got to figure out a way to muscle through. But the reality is most of the time you see these things coming a little bit off. So the impetus is then on you to make sure that you're prepared, because in that preparation, if you start to get stagnant, if you start to get stale, then you need to give yourself time to say, I need a break here, I need to reset myself, I need to figure something else out. Now, another way to go about this, and this is kind of building off of what I was talking about earlier with learning a new song that may be sort of out of your wheelhouse, another important thing is to remember that we're all music listeners. We all like music. That's why we do this. We don't just do this for the image or for how cool the electric guitar is or the acoustic guitar or whatever. So we have to be lovers of music first. So another great way to approach this is to listen to different music. Pick out an artist or someone that you've maybe been kind of interested in hearing more of, but you've never really taken the plunge, and just dive in. There's so many avenues to listen to music nowadays with all the streaming services, and you can get CDs at your beck and call, and just stop and say, you know what, I'm gonna get this album and just listen to something different. And sometimes that can sort of cause a snap in your brain as well, even if you wind up just playing the same thing, but just listening to someone else's expression that's off the beaten path from what you usually do. So you see, all these things kind of relate back to the same overarching theme. I really think the best way to get out of a rut, if you feel totally stuck, is to change it up. Something about it, I don't know if you want to call it a reset or what, but there's something about our brains that need to be shaken up every now and again. We need to be sort of refreshed. We need to be woken up in many ways. And so I think the best way to do it is to find whatever way of change works for you, to try and get those pieces back in alignment that allow you to play guitar in an expressive, creative, but also productive way. We're all trying to play good music. We're all trying to get better. We're all trying to be more professional, play smoother, however you want to phrase it. And sometimes the way to do that is to stop or to change, and to just keep in mind that whatever avenue we're going down, it's not the only avenue of guitar playing that's out there. Now, the other thing is that there is a reality of sometimes you need to just, again, muscle through. Sometimes you need to just play at times when you're not feeling inspired to play. Sometimes you need to just keep trying. And, that can be true for me. I've definitely found certain gigs that I've played where I was just not at all inspired. I was going through the motions, and yet there were people there to see me play, and I owed it to them to put my best foot forward. So it wasn't like a lack of interest in oh, I don't have any interest in playing for it was just, there was some kind of disconnect there. If you've ever been played in any kind of setting where you're I love what I'm doing and I love that I'm here, but something's off and I don't know what it is. Our brains are incredibly complex things. I don't have the answers to why this sort of thing happens, but it does. And sometimes you do just need to fight through. And in that case, you need to kind of have faith in the music. You need to have faith in the fact that there's a sort of a passion for it in your soul that sometimes comes out even when you don't think that it's there, right? There have been times when I felt really off, and then I've managed to listen back to a recording and gone, that was actually pretty good. And there have been other times when I felt like I was on, when I felt like I was in tune with the musical universe, and then I listened back and I went, that wasn't nearly as good as I thought it was. So sometimes you need to be able to step out of yourself in that way and say I don't necessarily know what's happening in the moment as much as I think I do. Sometimes you need to be able to look back and reflect. So this is a relatively quick one. That's the advice that I have for this. How many of you have ever been stuck in a rut? I imagine the answer is going to be 100% of you. If you haven't been stuck in a rut, feel free to let me know. But please let us know in the comments, what have you done to get unstuck? What have you done to refresh your musical mind? What have you done to reinvigorate and sort of get back that passion? I'm Jack Fossett. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Everybody's choices, yet you feel that anyone who disagrees is just obscene. Well, if that's what you call kindness, I'd hate to see you meet. Pushing for a fight, and so you scream and call them names until they bleed. Well, if that's what you call kindness, Lord, I'd hate to see you